to where you kind of want to be here. So remember that active response or active reconnaissance we were talking about? This is what it looks like with our tool when you graph it out. And so this is basically this 1.84 arced for every single machine in the subnet because they was getting scanned. So this is, this pops out like crazy. And so an active reconnaissance is very easy to find. Now, if you're on a network and you see something like this, you can infer several things, and this might be a target of opportunity. This could be maybe their own scanning framework that's out to find machines that get on the network and that aren't patched for something. So you could possibly attack it and get a database of machines on the network and what scans they've run and what exceptions they might have for certain servers that they can't patch. It might also be an infected machine. You could then probably figure out, like in the case of Conficker, you could see that and you now know how to get into this box. And so this brings up, not like from a defensive point of view, it'd be useful to see this, right? You'd be like, that guy's bad, or that's my scanning software doing what it's supposed to be doing. But as an attacker on a network, you can passively find places that this guy's also, if it is a scanning tool, generally that noise is going to keep going, and they're not going to assume that that machine is malicious in any sense. So if you break into this machine, you'll have a much better cover story, so to speak, when attacking other machines, because it's normal for this machine to constantly scan the network. So it's just these passive methods for comprehending what's on the network and where to go to next. So this is just more explanation of what we just talked about. The next big one that's really useful is NetBIOS. NetBIOS is awesome. Everyone should love NetBIOS because it gives you a plethora of information and it works all the time. And even better, if DNS fails, all Windows machines will fall back on NetBIOS to try and discover websites, machines, anything and everything. So a great one, which has been talked about a lot, is WPAD. So you can passively snip the network and just look for people doing NetBIOS queries for WPAD. And for those of you that don't know what WPAD is, which I assume a lot of you probably do, but WPAD is just your generic default proxy, web proxy for Firefox and Internet Explorer. I don't believe that Chrome uses it, but so it's your primary, if you're set up to do automatic proxy discovery, it'll immediately try WPAD, your domain, and it'll start at the top level and work its way all the way down. So if you have a fully qualified domain name, like it'd be wpadcompanyname.com, and then it would keep incrementing itself way down until, or actually no, it's reversed. So it starts local and then it works its way all the way up to the internet, if it can get there. So finding these type of machines gives you, one, a good understanding of the network and how to move through it, and what else might be useful. What are the things that it could be nice to see? So this is Black Hat DC, just general nodes. We can already see kind of clumping. We can see here, so DC1 Davy, that looks like a domain controller to me. I could be wrong. And you have, a bunch of other fun Hilton. We're obviously, so the hotel that the Black Hat DC is in is a Hilton, so you actually have the connections out for it. And then so if we go down a little further, we can see what websites they're going to. Well, we can tell this person's probably going to be flying the next day. He probably just checked in to print his ticket online. So and here's an instance of WPADs. Here's a fun one. So we know how the Army sets up their network, and a few others. So then there's other, and you can, now this is another useful thing where you can actually see that these machines are the same, but they have different IP addresses. So they were off the network, came back on the network, and so you can actually start seeing general footprints of this stuff. And oh look, we got a printing server. Where? Proxy 2. So it's kind of hard to see. This is basically a bunch of, there's obviously a lot of Army people here, and these are basically their rank. I believe it's because you have like a sergeant, staff sergeant. So you have a lot of it is just their standard naming conventions for their machines. in here. And so you can see that this is their domain server, which is ap.ds.army.mil. They have an SMS system, a lot of other fun things. So. And another fun one that's not actually implemented right now is iPhones. iPhones are wonderful, or MDNS in general is fairly wonderful because it gives you an idea of what's running and who's running it. iPhones are special because most iPhones they broadcast their name out of the person that owns them. So you now have even more personal information. All you have to do is look for. Another interesting thing about iPhones is, generally speaking, or iPhones have this, but they don't have a wired connection, so you know that there's going to be a wireless access point in proximity to this. So if you're on a wired network and you see iPhone type traffic or other traffic like this that can allow you to infer that there's a wireless access point nearby, you can then go and find it, which is very useful. So again, just you can get people's names. It's fairly useful stuff. And let's see if we can actually find. So this is I did 3 captures of the Wi-Fi here yesterday. So we can already see these 2 guys are fairly interesting. So 65, that he scanned that subnet fairly well. Was it? No? There's another one. Is it the same? So look, we have a WPAD. And so we know that this node looked for a WPAD for BMS. I'm not really probably search and figure out what company that is. And then we also know about this other server that it was looking for on a broadcast domain for it. Let's see what other fun. This, this is why I call it the cloud, because this is an ash cloud. There's just way too much ugly things going on here. But we can kind of see that, these, you can start seeing your sinkholes fairly well graphically, and if I knew how to use GraphViz correctly, we could probably get a little better. ISATAP is a fun one. This is an IPv6 to IPv4 kind of gateway. So we can infer that 10.0.46.23 is actually on an IPv6 address space, which is somewhat useful. You can, so that's a little, like, there's all kinds of tidbits of information like that. Let's see what the next one looks like for grins. Ooh, time.apple.com. But that's a Mac. So that's just the general view that we can see here, which is very, very ugly sometimes. So. And as again, you have general ability to ascertain people on a network of what they can do and so forth. And right now, eavesdrop it's written in C. It's primarily using LPCAP right now, but we can translate that into the sniffer module for Meterpreter, and hopefully someday you can deploy it as an extension to Meterpreter and get your information. The trade-offs, of course, are being you are missing some of it because you're offloading a lot of the processing to the machine itself to get its information and then hold it back. Instead of pulling the entire PCAP, though, you're pulling a much smaller data set. So like for the entire day of me sniffing this network, which gave me more than enough information to kind of move on to the next phase of things, was less than a meg of data, less than half a meg of data for an entire day. Full PCAP would probably be like 300, 400 megabytes of like on a wireless network of this size, more or less. So there's it's the advantage of offloading some of that processing up front and then only pulling small amounts back. Now this is also useful from the point of view that the less you have to exfil off of hosts, the less likely you're going to be seen and detected during a penetration test and that sort of thing. So. Huh? The sniffer module, so the question was, does Meterpreter utilize WinPCAP? And I believe it does in some form. It's all encompassed in the sniffer module itself, but it is PCAP. So I believe they took just the DLLs and loaded it from there. But yeah, it does support that.